Hey guys, and welcome back to the show. I am your host, Megan Hardy, and I'm here today with a very special guest. We are going to be talking about healthy communication for healthy relationships. And I'm very excited about this topic because this is really a part of the heart behind one, the Muscle Makeover, this podcast. It's a health and fitness podcast, but also Fitness Uncharted, which is my one-on-one coaching, fitness coaching business. And the heart behind that is not only looking at our physical fitness, but also our mental, emotional, and spiritual fitness as well. So this topic is crucial. I actually put a poll out on my stories asking you guys, like, hey, I'm going to be having this expert on. What do you want to ask them? What do you want to know about healthy relationships, having a healthy relationship? And you guys asked about healthy boundaries and healthy communication. So that's what we're going to be addressing today. And I have Beth Miller with us. She is an ordained minister with Elam Fellowship. She is the executive director of Love Like That Inc., which is a marriage and relationship ministry that's based in Virginia. And alongside her husband, David, she spent many years serving in their church, developing and leading a strong marriage ministry. She also enjoys every opportunity to lead premarital and marriage enrichment retreats and conferences at churches and other venues. And in addition to all of the marital ministry of Love Like That, Beth also serves as a speaker and coach for women in group settings and one-on-one. And she's still in love after 35 plus years of marriage, which is a huge, amazing feat. And Beth and David both are enjoying this season as empty nesters, though they count their three children and their spouses and two grandchildren as their greatest gifts from God. So I happen to be one of those children. Little do you know, if you don't know Beth Miller, that's my mom. So welcome, Mommy Beth. Thank you for being here.
Hey, thank you so much, Megan. It's such a pleasure to get to be here with you today. And I'm excited. This is my heartbeat, my passion. So I'm excited
Yeah.
to dig in and dive in deep into this topic with you.
Yes. And you guys are going to hear it like just flow, gush out of her because she is very passionate about this topic. And I have her to thank for a lot of who I am and also like Justin and Mai's relationship, my husband. Like, we don't have a perfect relationship by any means, but I have a lot. I have pretty much you and Dad David to thank for a lot of that. And also I have to share with you guys too. If I call her Mommy Beth, I do have an employee who works out of the Philippines, and she nicknamed Beth, aka my mom, Mommy Beth. So we might refer to her as Mommy Beth during this.
It
Mommy
worked.
Beth. But I would love to just kick things off by even just asking you. So, like, some of the polls or people's responses to the poll I put out was just about like, okay, how do I have healthy communication, especially if we're not on the same page, things like that. But what are just like some common issues that you see, whether it's married couples or just any relationship, when it comes to like having healthy communication?
Okay. Yeah, let's just
Just
go
jump in.
hit the nail right on the head right off the bat. That's great. I think, in our experience with Love Like That and all the years, is that the biggest challenge, to me, bar none, the biggest challenge is for people to actually listen. And what I mean by that is listening for understanding, actually hearing the heart of the other person. And especially when things get a little stressful or tense, if we're not agreeing on something, we're trying to work things out, we're trying to figure things out. Sometimes it's as simple as where we're going to go for dinner, but it's bigger stuff than that. But we do it all the time, that we're planning our rebuttal in our heads. We're a little at odds and I'm listening to you, but I'm really only half listening to you because I'm responding in my head. I'm getting my
Mm,
notes together and this is what I'm going to say and this is how I'm going to prove I'm right and you're wrong and all those things. And that doesn't work. That doesn't work. We get defensive and things escalate really quickly. So the biggest challenge, I think, bar none, is really learning how to listen for understanding, to really hear the heart of the other person, what's going on. Also, because sometimes the words that they say aren't actually what they mean. So you've
mm,
got to
hmm.
decipher through that too. That just, there's so many layers to why this is challenging. But if we will do that and validate their perspective, and
Mm,
that does not mean that we have to abandon our own. In fact, we've got several different images and, some of those weird drawings and whatever. And there's a picture where the lines connect. And if you're looking at one end of it, you can see 4 boards. But when you're looking at the other end of the same drawing, it's only 3. And so there's a person, a stick figure on either end, one saying 3 and one saying 4. They're looking at the same situation, but they see it differently. And both views are valid. And so if we can do that and listen for understanding, hearing what matters to the other person, what is going on with them, then we can validate their perspective. I understand that you see 3. I still see 4, but I understand that you see the room differently. You see the situation differently. And part of that, then the other side of that is getting better at communicating what's really on the inside of me. So if I want David, my husband, to listen and hear my heart, I need to work at being better at communicating that. So that means that instead of telling him what I need him to do, and he needs to shape up or ship out, he needs to do this and that and the other and whatever. Again, that tends to put someone on the defensive. But if I can express what it is that I need, I need encouragement. I need some peace. I feel so stressed. I need, and I feel stressed. One little tidbit of help is typically if we say, I feel like, usually what's coming after that word is a judgment of the other person. Sometimes it's not. You could, but by and large, it often is. I feel like you don't love me. I feel like you don't even care about what I want. I feel like, and the next thing out of my mouth is typically going to be a judgment of the other person. They're going to feel attacked and they're going to react to that. They're not going to respond to my need. They're going to react to the attack.
That's so good. So wait, how would you say it then instead of I feel like
Try to
blank?
stop. Right. So we actually have a cheat sheet of feeling words because a lot of times the guys, no disrespect to the men, but typically they have a little bit harder time communicating their feelings. But us ladies sometimes have a hard time with that too. So we actually have a whole page, and it's not an exhaustive list by any means, but just column after column of different feeling words. I feel anxious. I feel sad. I feel happy. Some of the obvious ones, but I feel intimidated. I feel vulnerable. So when I express to David how I feel, and what I need, it's like I need, we've been dealing with some family situations over the past couple of years, and I have felt stressed and overwhelmed at times. And so when I can communicate that, I'm just so tired and I feel overwhelmed. I need a break. I need some peace. And it's like that draws him into me.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I can see that. It's like, how can I help with that? It's like, and maybe it's just, give me room to take a nap or, a hot bath or something, or let's go away for the weekend or whatever it is. But it gives him the opportunity to respond to the need versus it's like, man, I need you to step up. Need you to get into this situation and say something, do something. And I've been that, you might remember, Megan, I was that mom, I was that wife, and it didn't go well for us when I was telling him what I needed him to do versus what I actually needed myself. Did that
And
answer?
so, yeah, so that's like the difference. Like I'm actually thinking of a certain friend I was talking to just the other day about some of this stuff with her spouse. But so like the difference being like instead of saying I feel so like say you're feeling unsupported, like instead of being like I feel like you just don't support me. I feel like you are just not there for me, whatever. Instead being like I'm feeling really unsupported right now. Like, is that the difference? It's like this is how I'm feeling versus it's because of you.
Yes, yes. I'm feeling very unsupported. And I would recommend, it's like my mind is running into different scenarios of how a young wife could be saying that. Maybe she's a mom too and overwhelmed with kid care and all that. It's like expand on that. I feel unsupported. I feel tired. I feel very alone and lonely in this place. And so I need help. Now I'm not saying you're the help. I'm just saying I need a break. I need some breaks built into my day. I need some help. So then that's where then the spouse could potentially respond to that. Well, how could we get that for you?
Mm.
Maybe it is
Also,
him, maybe it's not.
Well, and also how do you get them to hear you? Because to your point earlier, of like sometimes being good at listening. So this is like a double question. But like one, how do you even be, do you just have to be the bigger person to be able to listen better before just blurting out everything that you want to say? But this situation with a friend I was talking to the other day, she was like, her husband feels like she badgers him. And so then when she brings her feelings to him, he's like, well, what about like, he then lists all of his feelings. Like, what about me, my feelings, whatever. And she said the other day she switched it up. And because she's been doing her own self, reflection and trying to be a better wife. And she's like, so instead I was like, you're right. Like the how you've been feeling and treated hasn't been right either. And like I am sorry for that. Like I do know that like I shouldn't be badgering you like that. Like, yeah, like you haven't been treated great either. And then she said he immediately apologized for whatever she was feeling like hurt about too. But it took her first recognizing his feelings before he
Mhm.
could even see her feelings. So I'm like,
Right.
is it really just a matter of kind of being the better listener, the bigger person, or like how do you do that?
Yes. Yeah. To to a large degree, yes. You just illustrated it with that example,
Yeah.
and we've said to people many times over the years, it's like, you can tell the one, it's like, well, it's like, gosh, but there's almost a judgment in that, like he's so immature. It's like, when is he going to grow up and do the thing? And it's like, well, typically it's the mature one that has to set the example, right? I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
look at parents and children, you look in work situations, employers and employees, you look, it's the mature one. It's the one who's already been there and done that. It's the one who knows how to do it. We have a over 3-year-old dog and a young puppy in the house now. And it's amazing that the young puppy is learning from the mature dog.
Mm-hmm.
The young puppy is not going to set the example. What she's going to do is chew things that she's not supposed to chew, and she's going to piddle on the carpet and the floor and, all the things that puppies do. But she's learning what's appropriate by watching the mature dog. And it's like not comparing us to animals, but maybe I am, right?
Yeah.
Because it's the mature one that sets the example.
And the tone. Yeah. That's just such a hard thing to do sometimes to be. I know like I am definitely guilty of thinking of my response in my head versus just listening.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
I'm already creating the retaliation.
Right, right.
For sure.
But if you can train your own mind. And again, it gets harder and harder when things are tense,
Yeah.
right? And so, actually, one of the things that we do with couples when we're working with them one on one is we try to help them practice that skill because it's actually a skill. Just like there are things that you can learn, skills that you can learn in your careers and hobbies and all these other things. It's a communication and relationship skill that you can learn. And so we get them to practice with easy things. We get them to practice with positives instead of negatives.
Oh, that's good too.
So yeah, so like and what we do is kind of there's a little formula of sorts, to communicate. So when because you have to address what the other person did,
Hmm.
but you don't want to attack that. So, when you forgot to pick up the milk on the way home, I felt whatever. Okay. But to turn that into a positive, one of the first times David and I practiced this, I was like, I said, when you open the car door for me, I feel so treasured.
Mm.
And you should have seen his face, like when it hit him that
Hmm.
that mattered, that meant something to me because I am fully capable of opening a car door. And he doesn't open the car door for me every single time we hop in the car, but he does it a lot. Sometimes I see him going for it and I just go jump in and I don't even give him the opportunity, not to be mean, but just,
Hmm.
like, oh, we're in a hurry, let's go or whatever. But it's like that has stuck with him ever since. And then what you do, the listener paraphrases. And so it's like so then he's like, so when you, not parroting, but paraphrasing to demonstrate that they understand, so then he said back to me, it's like, oh, when I open the car door for you, you feel like I'm noticing you, I'm taking care of you, I love you. And I'm like, well, yeah, ding, 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 that's so good. Yes, I feel treasured, I feel special. And so it's like, just honored, like it's just such a, that's a little thing, but practicing those things. And of course you want to get, in order to practice that, you can do it on your own, but ideally you're maybe like if we were working with a couple, we're having both of them take turns doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we would move them from practicing with positives to practicing with a small tense issue, not World War III. It's like,
Yeah.
because you really have to work at it. And
Yeah.
it might feel just a little awkward, but our challenge to people is like, if you will implement the rules of engagement and communicating like this, when things are tense, and you both will agree to that, it gives you a framework to help prevent things from escalating and blowing up. It's like, well, that feels really awkward. It's not natural. How's the natural working for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay, blow up again. Have at it. That's,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. I think something you said made me think too of like you just the positive reinforcement thing of like talking about good situations, like saying how it makes you feel in good situations too. I'm like it's kind of like kids, like they need positive reinforcement. We need positive reinforcement as
yeah,
adults. But and even like I think of a situation like there's plenty of situations where like I try to do this like with Justin, like it could be the smaller thing, but like I feel like the difference between badgering or not, like there might be something that you want to change or you'd wish they do differently. But even approaching it, like one example I can think off the top of my head is like he made dinner the other week and like he made beef and we were putting like Worcestershire sauce and Dijon mustard in it, but he didn't like filter out or like oh what's it called, the grease, like get the grease off,
training.
right? So drain it. Thank you. He didn't drain it before putting that in. I was like, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so like greasy. Like when I ate it, I was like, did you like drain the grease before putting the other stuff in? He was like, oh no. And I was like, like that's okay. I'm like, thank you for making dinner. But instead of just being like what, like you're an idiot, like drain the grease is like, no, thank you. Like, thanks for making dinner. But like next time before you put this in, be sure to do this. So like I think even just like again, like the positive reinforcement, even if you do have something, because that's another thing I was talking with this friend about. It's like, how do you, if there's things that you wish your partner would do different or change, like how do you address that without just sweeping things under the rug, but
Right,
then also not making like putting them on the defense all the time or
right.
making them feel like, especially for men, like making them feel like, you know, they're not doing things well or right. And I feel like that's usually the case, like especially from women to men, making men feel that way oftentimes.
Right, right, right. Yeah. Well, one of the things that you touched on just a little bit in there, I would say is we want to start with practicing having generous assumptions.
Yeah.
And so we want to believe the best. And early on in our marriage, that was something, and no one really counseled us in that direction. It was just something we discussed and agreed together that we would choose to believe the best in each other, realizing that sometimes we are just selfish. I mean, I
Mhm.
am. And so is he, and so sometimes we were getting a dig in, or whatever, but most of the time that's not the case. And so if he says something or does something or fails to do something, I'm like, why didn't he do that? Or what did he mean by that? Or whatever. And the tendency to go to the negative track. But we're going to choose to believe the best. He didn't mean to hurt my feelings. He didn't mean to neglect me. He didn't fail to do that on purpose to frustrate me. For one thing, I'm not all that nice when I'm frustrated. So he doesn't tick me off on purpose very often, at all. So, but so that's a negative motivation to get there, but okay, whatever works. But we want to practice generous assumptions or believe in the best because most of the time, it's like I know that David Miller is the kindest man I've ever met besides Jesus. He is so
Mhm.
kind. He can be a bulldozer. He can,
Mhm.
he can be a bulldozer. He can pluck my last nerve. He blunt to the point. It's like, oh, frustrated. And yet, so that brings me to the next thing of celebrating our differences. So I want to live and be a woman who practices generous assumptions with other people, not a complete Pollyanna of just in denial if someone's toxic and unhealthy. That's a whole different conversation for another day. We're talking about the day-to-day thing
Mhm.
that happen in our relationships. We're not talking, and I want to make sure we make that really clear for any of your listeners, because if they're in a
Yeah.
really toxic, abusive, bad situation, we're not talking to you right now.
Yeah.
That's a different animal altogether. But we want to celebrate the differences. And so it's very easy I mean, and in fact, that's a lot of times it's the differences that attracted you in the beginning. And then after a
Mhm.
while of being together, those are the very things that pluck your last nerve. And so how do we get back to celebrating the differences? My husband is very analytical and logical in his thinking. And so it's like I saw him successful in his career and this wise, smart guy, and I appreciated all those things. And then as time went on, it's like I tend to be much more intuitive, and so it's like I sense things before I can put words to them sometimes. And so I might not have a good feeling about this, but I can't tell you why just yet. But I have to go
Mhm.
slow and whatever. And I think he liked that about me, but we actually ended up butting heads because of those differences. And it was like,
Mhm.
he's like, oh my gosh, you just, being led by your feelings all the time. And what the heck is that all about? It's like, that's not very smart. And then I'm like, do you even know God? I mean, do you need any help from anybody else? Because all the logic in the world, it's like you have all the answers, whatever. And so much frustration. But his logic, I do actually need that. And he and I are better together because we respect and honor those differences. And I look to him for his logic and reason, and he looks to me for my intuition and sensing, and we've practiced valuing and celebrating our differences. Another way that we do that is we work at reframing. Sometimes it's like, I know, of course, you know the story well, Megan, but he is safety man, and that's his role in his work in his career now. But he's always been that person, and he's locked doors, and I've been locked out of the house more times than I can count or even remember. And it would frustrate me back when you were in kindergarten, getting on the bus, standing on the front porch because the bus stopped right there in front of our house, turn around to go get back in the house, and the door is locked. Like, oh
So
my
funny.
gosh, you're afraid the boogeyman's going to get past me and come get you? I mean, what in the world? What is the problem? And I would get so frustrated. And so, lots and lots of stories with all of that. But ultimately, what I had to do was remember, he's kind. He doesn't want to just annoy me. I don't know why he has to lock every door no matter what, but it's just he's on autopilot. He literally has locked
Mhm.
himself out more than once.
Yeah.
More than you can count on two hands, without, just walk out the door, lock it, and then can't get back in. But lots of funny stories with all that. But what I did was I had to reframe that because he is safety man. And so if I want to be sure I'm not going to be locked out, I should take a key. So I take responsibility for my own well-being in that situation. And I'm not going to blame him or get mad at him, but it's like I know that that's a tendency for him, that for whatever reason, 35 plus years in, he still can't not do it.
Mhm.
So it's like I just accept that about him. And then I reframe the situation. Have you ever gone and taken a piece of art or a family portrait or something like that, and you go to the store to get a frame for it? And it's like you put it up with one frame and it's like, whatever. And then you get the right frame. Maybe it has a mat, it doesn't, whatever. But you get the right frame for the picture. And all of a sudden, this art turns into Thomas
Mhm.
Kincaid, lights pouring out of it. It's beautiful. You hang it on your wall. And it's like, did the picture change? No, the picture
Mhm.
was the same. What changed was the frame that you put around it.
That's
And
so
then you,
good.
yeah, and you hang that on your wall, and nobody walks in your house and goes, "Wow, nice frame."
Mhm.
They're not looking at the frame. It's not about the frame, it's about what's in the frame.
Mm.
That's a beautiful painting. That's a beautiful family portrait, whatever it is, right? And they notice it. And so I can reframe how I think about my husband or about you or whoever, right? And I have to practice that. What are the things? So safety man, my husband who locks doors and would thoroughly tick me off with all of that over the years. I'm so grateful because you grew up, my kids grew up with a dad who they knew was protecting them.
Mhm.
If we were going to go somewhere, I didn't worry about tire pressure. I didn't worry about, it's like sometimes you couldn't get stuff in the back because of all the possible emergency equipment, that's in there. Of course, jumper cables and extra fluids and oil and all the things, it might snow. It's July, honey. But, there's a
Yes.
snow shovel, there's a, whatever, but all the things that you could possibly need, and so there are so many things that I don't even know that we've been protected from. all these
Mm-hmm.
years. And I depend on him and I count on him. And I'm incredibly grateful for my safety man.
Mm-hmm.
So locking doors is part of his job. So my
Yeah.
take my key and just keep loving him. So reframing.
Yeah.
It's,
Reframing. That's so good. So,
yeah,
so good. So good. I had another question for you, but kind of alongside boundaries, because this was from someone who answered the poll. So like even just so like switching gears a little bit, but like just setting healthy boundaries, like whether that means like with your partner, spouse, or maybe like extended family, but like just like maybe more so. And this person who mentioned it, I think there's the situation here, because I know there's so many situations, like to try to give some context. But as far as like when even when she's with her, I think it was her boyfriend, but her boyfriend's extended her family, and being with them and like trying to keep up with her health fitness goals, but them not really respecting boundaries like with food or things like that. But like, do you have any like advice or just word nuggets around like setting healthy boundaries, whether that's with your person or family, extended family?
definitely, definitely. That's another topic that's near and dear to my heart, because boundaries are often very much misunderstood. Even for those of us that are trying to set them, we have to start by knowing what they really are. And just a basic definition is, me having my own boundaries is me managing me. It's not me controlling anyone else, not my husband, boyfriend, extended family, coworkers, or anyone. It's not about me managing or controlling another person. It is me managing me. And so, a definition, simple, easy to grasp definition of boundaries is a boundary is something that keeps the good stuff in and the bad stuff out. So, your skin is a boundary. And if you get a cut, you bleed, the good stuff comes out, germs get in, the bad stuff gets in, and you get sicker, right? Get an infection, whatever. And so it's your responsibility to manage yourself well, and it's my responsibility to manage myself well. So in real life, what does that look like? One example would just be, one of my personal boundaries is I don't engage in disrespectful conversations.
Mm-hmm.
So that means then that I'm going to communicate with honor and respect towards others. And I'm going to remove myself from a conversation if I'm not being treated reciprocally that way. It's like, I'm sorry, I don't, it's like, I don't want to raise my voice and yell at you and say ugly things to you. So right now I need to back away from this conversation, but happy to return to it. And it's like, I'm not going to yell at you and you don't yell at me. So let's return to this conversation when we can be respectful. I will tell you that doesn't always, in real life, it's not always pretty. Your dad and I that's an agreement that he and I both have, or each of us share that same boundary that we appreciate and own as our own. And, one Saturday morning, some years ago, I was at the kitchen sink and he came in and all of a sudden we were just at each other and it was escalating and it's so funny because even later that day, neither one of us could remember what it was that set us off, but we were just at it. And finally I turned and looked at him and I was like, "You're not being," and I couldn't even finish the sentence because my facial expression, my tone of voice, everything in me, the words that I'd already said, clearly I wasn't being respectful either, right? So I was like, we are not being respectful right now. I am done with this conversation. And he looked at me, said, "Fair enough," and walked. And so, we love to tell that little example because it wasn't pretty. It wasn't, whatever, but we still engaged our values that guide our boundaries. We still called on that. And so, even in a tense moment, and later we did come back and apologized and really in that situation laughed because whatever it was trivial and we didn't even really remember. It's like probably hadn't had coffee yet. I don't know, whatever. But it works even when it's not pretty. It's worth the effort of living by our boundaries. But again, I couldn't make him do it, and that's where I really wanted to go. You're not being.
Yeah.
But I had to just own it myself. And I would say
Okay.
foundational to me having my own healthy boundaries and being able to enforce them is that I have to know who I am. So I've got to be secure in my own identity and know my value.
Mm,
The more that I do that, that does not set me above anyone else. What it really does is it sets me free to appreciate and honor their value.
mm,
And so it's easier to communicate um, with honor and respect towards others the more that I honor and respect myself and know who I am. And so even when I say, I'm sorry, I can't, it's like, man, this is blowing up, but I can't engage in this right now. I care about you. I
hmm
even care that this is bothering you, but I can't fix that. And I just have to remove myself for the moment. And that's different, but it starts like having that identity secure.
Could you like elaborate on that a little more? Maybe even give even another real life example, like because I think a lot of people think that like boundaries, like saying no, like a lot of people pleasers, whatever, they like have a hard time saying no. They think that it's going to come across that their fear is it's going to come across as unloving or they're going to disappoint someone else by creating this boundary. But actually, I love what you said. Like boundaries are not only keeping bad stuff out, it's keeping the good stuff in. But I think like getting people to recognize that actually creating healthy boundaries when they are a healthy boundary, and maybe even differentiating that between a healthy boundary and maybe like versus putting a wall up. Because I think that's everything. Maybe people don't know the difference between those two. I don't know, but it's like helping someone understand that creating healthy boundaries is actually loving the other person. Like, do you have any examples or can you elaborate
Well,
on
yeah,
that?
just you talking about the difference of putting a wall up. I would say that you can tell, what are the goals? What are your goals in relationship? And, it's like we would suggest that, and I'm not being the royal we, I speak from that perspective a lot because your dad and I do so much of the ministry that we do together. But
Mm-hmm.
we would suggest that our goal is boils down to really one word or um, either the positive or the negative, if you will. But really, you want connection or you want disconnection. And so I want the best possible connection. I want genuine connection in my relationships with the people around me, from my spouse, my kids, grands, neighbors, whoever, right? I want the best possible connection. And so if that connection is being strained and stressed because of poor choices, because someone is inserting themselves inappropriately, then the connection's not good and healthy. And so then it is actually loving. Just like it's you have boundaries, like, and this is a boundary for a child, but your 3-year-old wants to go play in the street. It's like, the boundary is no, you can't go outside of the yard.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that's not safe. And so it's like we want to respect the space of each person and honor that. I don't know if I'm answering your question very well.
Yeah. Well, even like one another example I just thought of is like I actually had a client who she's like even just like how would you deal with someone not respecting a boundary that's a healthy boundary for you, even like as little a thing as like her culture is very much all about food. And so like she's like her mom expects like not only do you fill up your plate and eat the whole plate, but you go back for seconds and get a full heaping second plate and eat the whole plate. And she's on a health and fitness journey. And she's like, it's just like it's just basically like how do I overcome this cultural thing even? So like that's an extra complexity. But like how do you approach in a loving way like people that aren't respecting or acknowledging the boundaries that you're
Mhm.
setting up?
I think that would, and for me, I just on a personal level, I think it would beg for a conversation with that person outside of the moment.
Yeah.
So if it's your mom, or your Aunt Susie or whoever, that you say, hey, can we talk? And this is before the 4th of July picnic that's coming up or the wedding or whatever events are coming. And just saying, there's so many things that I love about who we are as a family. There's so many things that I love about who you are. And I'm so glad that you're my mom, you're my aunt, you're whoever. And I love our culture. There's so much I love about who we are as a people, as a family unit and group. But there are some changes that I need to make for myself and that I'm making. And so I'm asking you to not that you don't have to cook any differently, or, I can bring my own things or whatever, but just respect my no.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just asking you to do that, and that it's not me not getting, huge heaping amounts of your mac and cheese is not an insult to you. It's the
Mm-hmm.
best mac and cheese on the planet. I just can't eat a bucket full of it.
Yeah.
And so, will you respect that, and honor that? And on the flip side, maybe there are some ways that you can make some allowances. It's like, but your key lime pie is to die for too. And every time you fix that, I'm going to eat a piece.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
whatever. Well, whatever. It's like, so some of that is just, again, interacting relationally, but talking about generous assumptions. It's like, I know that, doing all this is it's your love language. You're demonstrating how much you love all of our family, including me, by preparing all of this or doing all of that, or whatever. So I so appreciate that. And I see the love, and it means the world to me. Just validating and
Yeah.
trying to see their perspective, even if they haven't put words to it. Again,
Mm-hmm.
even before they've said it, you're trying to see and hear their heart. I mean, do you really think, again, generous assumptions, do you really think they just want to cram that food down your throat out of
Yeah.
this? So if you can back it up a few steps and practice generous assumptions going into that and communicate that way, and then ultimately, hopefully, they're going to respond favorably, but they, still might not always. And just say, hey, if you try to push the second helpings, I'm going to have grace for you, but I'm still going to say no.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not going to get offended, because I know it comes out of your mouth it might come out of your mouth without you even thinking about it. And I get that, because that's another thing, when you're setting boundaries and other people are learning how to navigate, you just change the rules of the game. It's like, if you're dancing, and all of
Mm.
a sudden you go from a waltz to a foxtrot, but
Yeah.
the person you're dancing with didn't know you were going to switch,
Yeah.
you're going to step on some toes,
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah.
Right. And so how do we do that dance successfully with open, generous, assumptive communication, and a lot of grace?
That's so good. I think even a lot of people are even scared to have the conversation, like to have that conversation, or they just assume things will never change with that person. So instead of going to the mom and being like, having that conversation, hey, I so appreciate you. I know it's coming from a place of love. Food's your love language. Like, I love it. Like, but this is what I need to do. I'm not going to have three helpings, whatever. People, instead of having that conversation, people are just like, well, that's just my mom. It's like they almost like don't have the conversation. So I think starting there is such a good place. And then I love what you said too, is that you're changing the game and you're setting new boundaries in place. It's literally like a new game that someone has to learn in a way. So like I can think of like even with my own food or drinking or alcohol or whatever, like at first, like when I don't drink oftentimes when I'm at social events now. And at first for a lot of friends, it was weird. They're like, why aren't you drinking? But now it's just like they had to relearn the game a little bit. Now it's like it's not a big deal. And then like with food, I mean, talk about Grandma Anna Lee
Right.
with dessert or with second helpings or whatever. It's like it took a while, and she still, to God rest her soul, like love her, she's not with us anymore, but like she, I don't think ever fully liked my decision to maybe not have dessert right after a massive dinner. Um, she never,
Right.
I don't think, loved that response, but she ended up accepting it, like after learning, like, no, I'm actually standing at my boundary. I'm really, really full, grandma, but I love you. Thank you for making this. So,
Right. Right.
but it
Right.
took adjusting, like for her, for the other person. It might
Yes.
be an adjustment period too.
Exactly. And you had to have grace and not get reactive when she kept trying. Well,
Yeah.
have this, try that, just one piece, whatever. And so to continue extending grace while you stood firm, it's like, no, because you were understanding this is different for her. And
Yeah.
she, that was a primary way for her to communicate love. It's like
Yes.
push away from this massive meal, and it's like, okay, well, let's have a snack before you leave. I'm like, oh my gosh, we can't.
Yes.
Yes, you can.
I'm like, okay, I'll bring some home with me. Okay. I'm just really way too full right now, but I will bring some home that
Right,
I'll
right.
probably eat on my way home in the car, but it's fine. Um, but one last question on in honor of time, because gosh, like I think we're going on like an hour here, I think. Um, but I had another question from someone on the poll I did this week asking basically, and this is kind of a wide question, so I didn't get a specific context for this. So whichever way you want to take it or answer, but just as far as finding common ground and getting on the same page. And she mentioned getting on the same page as far as faith or fitness or whatever, finding common ground when you don't have that common ground. So like one example would be even having maybe like how to handle a spouse who's not supportive of your fitness goals. This is a fitness podcast. So I have plenty of clients who their spouse is not on board with them getting coaching at first or starting a program. And I've had the women who are like, well, good thing I have my own job because I'm going to do it anyway, you know. So, but then I also have the other women who need to have that conversation and get that support from their spouse. But it's like, how do you do that instead of asking your spouse for permission? How do you get that support instead of it being like, hey, can I have your permission? Can I get the support? And or just getting on the same page. Like I can imagine too, for a lot of people listening and a lot of the women I've talked to, like maybe they want to work on their health and fitness, but their spouse is buying all the goodies from the grocery store. They, you know, like they say they want to go on walks with them in the evening after dinner. They never do. You know, it's like just like how do you get on the same page or find common ground when you don't have it in some of those things?
Yeah, well, I mean, you can't force it, so you may not get it.
Yeah.
We have to absolutely acknowledge that. So, but in our efforts to find some common ground, I think we go back to what we already, talked about a little bit, and that's communicating what it is we really need. And so we need to understand for ourselves. And so just as much as we want to be good listeners and actually listen for understanding for the other person. I mentioned earlier, but we'll reiterate that it takes a lot sometimes for us to understand really what's the deepest part of me. What do I really need? And so, for the woman who's on her fitness journey, why is she doing this? Well, she has health goals and fitness goals. Okay. Um, but what does it mean? And I know that's something that you mine with your clients, understanding what their why is basically, what is it that I really need out of this? And so the support that I need, I don't feel good about myself. I need to feel like, I'm going to be around for my grandchildren and I need, it's like, these are my goals. And so you dig deeper into yourself about what's going on. What do I really need? And then you have to release the other person sometimes from your expectation that they're going to be the one to provide it. Um,
Mm,
and if it's you and your husband and he adamantly says no, I absolutely totally 100% and no, don't do this program, whatever. It's like, that's a different conversation to have with someone. It's like, we're not going to go to that place right now because that's really hard. If it's 100%, like, I don't even want you to do this at all. But in terms of, just their acceptance may need to just be enough that they're
mm,
tolerating and accepting that you're doing it and that you're getting your support. That's part of the beauty of Fitness Uncharted is the camaraderie and the support that's there, not just from coaches, but from other people going, that are on the journey too. And so that's something that's really beautiful. And then finding that support around them, a neighbor that will walk with them in the evenings.
yeah.
It's just my husband doesn't meet every need that I have, and I
Mm,
don't meet every need that he has. And so my need to be able to, and even when we've been at odds with each other, I mean, there was a season some years ago, I know you will remember it, but where things were really hard for us. We hit a pretty big wall in our relationship and ended up getting some really, really good help. But in that really hard part, there was a point where it's like, I thought I was going to implode and explode all at the same time with everything that was happening. He called it, the perfect storm. I called it the year from hell. Um, but I finally, went to him and I just like, I can't do this, for another summer. It's like there was this, 2.5, 3 month period where I knew that a lot there was, it was it was going to be boiling hot, that there were all the factors were going to be coming together in that period. I'm like, I can't do this again the way it is. It's like, I need to get away. And I named off 4 different friends that lived in 4 different states. And it's like, because I didn't want someone tickling my ear, like, oh, well, what a jerk. And you shouldn't stay and, whatever. I didn't want any of that. I wasn't, trying to escape him per se. I didn't want to continue blowing up myself. I wasn't doing a good job of managing myself in that season. And so I was the angry, cussing white woman, and I didn't want to be her. And so I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know what to do in all of this. And it's like, I need to, it's like, but you pick where I go, because he knew that I needed to talk through things. And I wanted him to know that who I was talking with was safe. And
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, that in that situation, that poked the bear in him, not at me, but it poked fear in him, that he was afraid that I was leaving, which I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't, and that was never on a consideration. That wasn't what I wanted to do. But I ended up not going away. But my point in sharing the story was my need for someone to listen with God ears, to bring life and encouragement and hope into my situation with me, and to be there for me. And I needed support that he could not provide.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
couldn't. And so, if your boyfriend or husband or whoever is not on board and engaging at the level that you wish, you might have to manage your own expectations. And
Mm-hmm.
that's part of boundaries too, is understanding, because an expectation is really what we wish will happen, right? I hope that this is what's going to happen. And so we have an acronym for how we manage our own expectations. They need to be real, REAL. And so, we've all been in situations. Maybe you've gone to a party and you left feeling kind of disappointed and you don't even know why. It's like, that wasn't so great. But you went in expecting it to be a certain way and it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't stop and analyze that. You didn't know what your expectations were. And so if you haven't recognized them, there's your R, recognized them, you don't even know that you have an expectation.
That's
It's
so good.
it's likely that it won't get met.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even know it. You were wanting it to be like this, but it was like this, which was great. This is what the plan was, but you were expecting that. And so you have to recognize it, but that's not enough. And again, in our relationships, I have an expectation of you, but I don't tell you, you know,
Mm-hmm.
well, I can't really, hold your feet to the fire for not meeting it if I haven't even communicated it. So the E is expressed. I need to recognize it, and then I need to communicate or express it. And so and often we stop there. And a lot of times women, and we'll use the simple little example of, it's like, well, I don't want to have to tell him, because then that ruins everything. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to tell him I want him to bring me flowers, because then it won't mean anything. And I'm like, why wouldn't it mean something?
Yeah. Well, the boy don't know you want the flowers, so you better tell him.
Exactly, right? And so it's just because, so now he knows something that would make you feel loved and special,
Yeah.
and he goes and does it. Why is the message, does that message not count now? I don't understand that. But anyway, we're talking about bigger things than getting flowers, although that's big. I love to get them. So recognized, expressed, and then the A, we think, well, I told him what I wanted. I want him to go for walks with me in the evening. But did he actually agree? And I don't mean just saying, to shut you up.
Yeah.
I mean genuine agreement. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'm all in on this. Yeah, I'm going to do this. And so we definitely think we should stop there, because I knew I had it. I recognized it. I communicated it, expressed it to him, and he agreed. And he actually sounded like he meant it. But how likely is it?
Mm-hmm.
That's your L. And so again, it doesn't take um like for David, locking doors.
Mm-hmm.
He knows I don't want to be locked out.
Yeah.
No doubt whatsoever. And he has agreed he will not lock me out. And yet, for
It's
some reason, he still will do it. And
it's
so
very likely that he will do still
it's
do
very
it.
likely. It's very likely. And so if my expectation, I can't meet all four of those criteria, then I
Hmm.
need to take it off the table of expectation. I can take it to the Lord with a heart of expectancy because God will meet my needs. And God says, Beth, take the key with you.
Yeah.
You're
So good.
golden, you know? And so it's not, again, it's that's me. That's a healthy boundary. That's a way for me to manage me well, that I manage my expectations. And it takes so much pressure. It doesn't mean my needs and what I want aren't important, but I'm trusting that God will meet my need. He'll use other people in healthy ways,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it just frees us up in our relationship. And we don't have to have, we don't have arguments over locked doors. We laugh about it.
So good. So good. Pick and choose your battles, healthy expectations.
Yes.
It's so good. Well, thank you for all of your wisdom. I'm fortunate to have grown up with it, but I hope everyone listening has gotten a lot out of this. Just to summarize, I feel like we have a lot of nuggets here. Okay, going back. So, being a good listener, truly listening. What else do we have? Boundaries, really good boundaries, generous assumptions, practicing generous assumptions.
And,
What else
and
do we
part of
have?
the communication, being a good listener, is also digging deeper, learning how to communicate more effectively what's really on the inside of me, what I need and how I feel, which is
Yes,
within me versus attacking or judging the other person.
communicating what you need and how you feel, not a judgment on them. So good. And then what else do we have? Healthy communication, real expectations, which
Yeah.
the real is recognized, agreed,
Recognize, express,
expressed. Wow. Eva comes before A. Okay. Expressed,
agree,
agreed, likely,
likely.
likely.
Mhm.
I love it. Love it. So good. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it. I hope everyone got so much out of this. You guys will have to give us feedback if you want Mommy Beth to come back. We'll do another segment. We can dive deep into like a more niche topic too, because she's got a wealth of wisdom and knowledge as far as all things marriage and relationships. So, anyway,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Absolutely. And if anybody has any interest in learning more about what we do with our ministry and would be, potentially want to have a retreat for as a couple, we do one-on-one retreats with couples. LovelikeThat.org is our website. Check us out and you can reach me through that.
Yes, and I will also add that to the show notes so you guys can go find her too. And reach out. She's the most receptive, passionate person for anyone. Like she's the person, this is something I'm gonna cry or get emotional talking about this. She's the person that'll talk to you for 3 hours. So she makes time for people. So anyway, go check them out too. Thank you, Mommy Beth. I love you.
I love you. Thank you. Bye.